Hello everybody, welcome to the second part of the first ever episode of Dragon's Digits, the show where we believe everyone has the ability to analyze League of Legends at a high level. So in the first part, we've already talked a bit about some basic data analysis stuff, but before we go more in depth, we have to talk about some common pitfalls or misconceptions when looking at League of Legends statistics. So let's start out with addressing the biggest factor to consider when comparing players and player data, which is the effect of winning. Players on winning teams have huge statistical advantages over players on losing teams, specifically in the KDA and gold related stats, but also to a lesser extent in damage per minute and kill participation stats. So just as an example, if we look at the stats for mid laners in the 2018 summer NALCS regular season, we see that when sorting by KDA, that 5 of the top 6 mid laners in North America last year with the highest KDA had win rates at or above 50%, with Huhi being the only exception. And 3 of the top 4 players were Jensen, Bjergsen, and Pobelter, who all were on some of the top teams in North America. So as you can see, KDA has quite the impact based off your win rate. So it often creates the illusion that all the best players are on the top 2 to 3 teams, when in reality, usually some of the best players can be hidden on lower placing teams where they aren't given the resources to show their skill. However, proper data analysis can help find those players and can help you give a more accurate picture of who the best players around the league are. So this has been a common problem in MVP voting in the past. If you want to go more in depth about that topic, Thorin has a great video talking about the sort of issues with some MVP voting and the way it's gone previously. But it is very crucial to factor in win rate when assessing general team or player specific stats. Okay, now in addition to that, team stats and team styles also have a major impact on their player stats and must be taken into account. Every team approaches the game in a slightly different way, and that usually ends up showing in the numbers. So let's take a look using some examples from the 2018 North American LCS summer split. So the first big difference is there are some teams that prefer to play early game versus some teams that prefer to play late game. Now, I'm just talking about a preferred medium to operate as opposed to a strict rule, but, in general, teams have patterns about the way they like the game to go when they're playing well. So an early game team would be an example of an early game team, as you can see, based off the shortest game times, would be teams like Team Liquid, whereas an example of late game teams would be teams like 100 Thieves or Optic or Clutch Gaming. So early game teams usually have better lane stats as well as better dragon and tower related stats. So if we just for a second look at the first dragon percentage, we see that the 3 highest are Team Liquid, Golden Guardians, and Echo Fox, which coincidentally are the exact 3 teams with the shortest average game time. So just a bit of a coincidence there. Meanwhile, late game teams usually have better kill participation and KDA stats, as well as better gold per minute and damage per minute stats, just because the game's gone on longer, so they have more time to build up those numbers. If you sort based off kills gotten, you can see that the team with the most kills is 100 Thieves, who are the best sort of the late game teams. So obviously they amass the highest amount of kills, and they also have the highest kill to death ratio. So their KDA stats are just going to look better. So another example of a sort of a difference in style are high tempo teams versus low tempo teams. Now, an example of a high tempo team would be a team like Echo Fox, whereas a low tempo team is more like a team like TSM. Faster paced teams usually have higher kill counts and damage per minute numbers, particularly for the junglers. And slower paced teams usually have better KDA and CS stats. So let's just take a look at my theory that faster paced teams have higher damage per minute numbers for the junglers. So if we go to junglers with over 5 games played in the North, which by the way, I didn't point this out previously, but it's very important to ensure you have a decent sample size, because if there's like 1-offs or 2-offs, people didn't play that many games, it really skews the stats and you don't get an accurate representation. So I always try to to put a number in the minimum amount of games played that ensures you get a decent amount, a decent sample size, and the main people for every team. So, anyways, if you sort by junglers that played more than 5 games, and then we're looking at damage per minute, right? If you sort by damage per minute, you can see that the top damage per minute people, right, from the past season were Blabber, Contracts, and Dardoch. Now, all of those teams, Cloud9, Golden Guardians, and Echo Fox, and Sven Skaren's number 4, were all fairly fast-paced teams, some of the faster-paced teams in the league. Meanwhile, if you go to the flip side, in terms of lower damage per minute, you see, there he is in last place, it's Grig, followed by Smithy and Acadian, as TSM and Optigaming specifically were 2 of the slower-paced teams in the league. And Team Liquid just had fast games, so their damage numbers are going to look lower. So, looks like that theory pretty much adds up. So, specific, in addition to team styles, specific team comps also play a role. Drafting a team with 3 winning lanes and early game champs is going to impact your stats the same way as a more normal comp in the hands of an early game team. So, it's very important a team drafts to their ideal style, although that's a topic for another video. And that's basically it for this episode. Now that we have the basics down to conduct valuable data analysis, how do we know the style of each team and what stats are more or less valuable? Is our number crunching generating anything useful? The key to support your analysis with video support is you have to watch the games. I may go more in depth on the importance of visual support in another video, but before you can dissect valuable data, it's crucial that you understand the source of the data and where it actually has meaning. An absolutely critical part of understanding league data is watching the games themselves. Without actually watching the games and or hearing from experts of the local scene, the data has very limited value or meaning. Okay, so that's basically it for this episode, guys. In this part, we followed up our dive into the basics of data analysis by going over some of the major pitfalls of improper data analysis. Despite that, we've still yet to touch on our biggest and most important tool in breaking down data. What is that, you ask? Well, you'll have to tune in to part 3 to find out, folks.